Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Town of Plaistow's Board of Selectmen meeting for August 10th, 2020. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. And Beth, may I have a roll call, please?
Select Chair, Ms. Hart.
Here.
Select Vice Chair, Mr. Talion.
Here.
Selectman Mr. Kishka.
He is absent at this point.
Selectman Mr. Blinn, I believe he's joining us remotely.
Yes, that's correct.
Here.
Okay, good.
Selectman Mr. DeRoche.
Here.
And note for the record, Finance Director, Assistant Town Manager, Mr. Colby, is joining us remotely.
All right, great. And before we start our meeting, I will preface this by letting everyone know that because we have one person who is absent from our board, all of our motions will be done by a roll call vote so that everybody can hear each other. And I notice Mr. Kishka has just arrived, so he is going to be present. So if we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I also need to ask our remote participants if you are in your various quadrants by yourself and there's no one present with you, so could you acknowledge that, please? Greg Colby, are you by yourself?
Yes, I am.
All right, and how about you, John?
Yep, I'm alone.
All right, great. Okay, thank you. All right, so first order of business is to approve the minutes of July 27th, 2020.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes of July 27th, 2020 of the Board of Selectmen meeting.
All right, thank you. May I have a second on that?
Second it.
All right, that's seconded by Julian. Is there any discussion before we vote on this? All right, seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, and Beth, if you could do a roll call for us?
Select Chair, Ms. Hart.
Yes.
Vice Chair, Mr. Talion.
Yes.
Selectman Mr. Kishka.
Yes.
Selectman Mr. Blinn.
Yes.
Selectman Mr. DeRoche.
Yes.
All right, great. So that motion carries 5-0-0. The next item agenda is public comment, and we did receive an email this morning from Laurie Millette over at 27 Smith Corner Road, and her question is, when will the 2020 reevaluations be done and publicized? So I reached out to Steve Whalen, who is our project manager for Visions, and he wrote back to me that approximately 90% of the residential properties have been assessed externally. 75% of them have been assessed from the commercial side of it. They are still waiting on some income statements to come back. They expect to have that data mailer out in the next week or two regarding the interior dimensions and accommodations of your home. So we're going to ask you all to be on the honor system to fill those out and make sure they match the data cards. If there's any changes, please make changes on it and send it right back into the assessor so they can finish their work. He also indicated to me that they are on track with their process, and by the end of October, he's thinking around October 21st, they should be finished with all of the assessments. So they're going to request that citizens, if they disagree with the assessments, they are to make appointments in November to dispute and to speak with the assessors to see if their assessments may be changed. Those dates to have your appointments are going to be October 26th through 11/6, through November 6th. So that'll give you a good week to make appointments to dispute your assessments if you disagree with it. The final numbers should be coming in, according to him, the week of November 6th through the 13th. So it's a fairly, unfortunately, late start, but those are the dates that they've given us, and they've been kind of on track so far with their target dates, so we're hoping that those stay. And if there's any delays or any issues, obviously the board will report it publicly right away. So I hope that answers your question, Laurie. And if you have any more questions, please don't hesitate to, give us an email or a call. So the next item on our agenda is I'm going to turn it over to our wonderful fire chief, Chief Knudsen, who has yet another wonderful surprise for us. So I'm going to turn that over to you, Chief.
Public comment?
No.
Pardon?
Is there anyone in the audience for public comment?
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
That's the Sexton.
Oh,
Go ahead, Chief.
never met him.
Madam Chair,
Sorry, Chief. Go
I'm
ahead.
proud to bring some more good news to our town and to the taxpayers. Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, through the Department of Homeland Security, has several different grant programs out there. They want communities to be prepared to be able to respond to and recover from various types of disasters and emergencies. So in 2020, they earmarked $1.78 billion that's available in grant funds to fire departments, emergency management agencies, and police departments. So out of that, a section that is the Assistance to Firefighters Grant Program, the AFG, and then they had a sub of that for the coronavirus pandemic. So earlier this year, I did apply for that. I'm planning on going after all and any grant funds that this town can benefit from. Last week, we were notified that we will be awarded, if you all will accept it at the next meeting, $18,017.14 from this grant. The town will have to have a little bit of a match to it for $986, which brings the total to $18,918 of funding. It's my understanding that the gopher funds that our state has dispersed through different towns will pay for the $900.
Oh, perfect.
So you might want to check with the finance director, but I'm pretty sure that'll be covered under the gopher funds. So this entire grant will be with no expense at all to the taxpayers. There'll be funds coming back in. It is going to recover or reimburse funds that we have already spent on personal protective equipment for our first responders, and then it will provide sustainability for probably next 12 to 18 months of PPE for our first responders. So they're well prepared, and then it's not a burden on our taxpayers.
That's outstanding. Board, do you have any questions? Go ahead, Julian.
Yeah, I have one question. I was reading one of your other documents when I seen this one first, and it says something about you needed to be, or someone needed to be the point of approval or something, and we wanted to make it you, I guess.
No,
That
actually,
is-
it's Mark,
Mark?
for approval of grants, I believe.
So I think at the next meeting, because there has to be some time for public comment or
Yeah.
public notice, I will need the board to not just accept the grant, but to appoint me as the authorized organization representative. So that allows me
All right.
it's very simple in the FEMA program. All I got to do is click accept. But before I can click that button on the computer login screen,
Okay.
I have to be appointed as the authorized organization representative.
All right,
to
so
do
I
that.
stand corrected. I thought Mark had the authority to sign off on all of these things. Go ahead, Greg.
So Chief, will there be any requirement by the board to either put a motion forward to take care of those gopher funds, or to expend those gopher funds, or is that already the purpose of those funds? Mr. Colby, could you answer that question?
Can you repeat that question?
Sure.
The sound broke up.
Will the board require to put a motion forward to expend those gopher funds?
No, they will not. You've already motioned to spend up to the allotted amount of the 182, so there is no motion on that needed.
Great, great. Any other questions or comments from the board? So, yeah, so I think we're just going to keep scheduling you every month so you can just keep bringing us money. And I think that would be a great idea. So we'll see you in September.
So remember that when I'm asking for some funds in
I
November.
will exactly remember that, and I hope the public will remember this as well, that you've brought in close to $150,000 to the town that we don't have to pay for. So we thank you from the bottom of our hearts, and thank you for all your hard work that you've already done for us just this year.
So I plan on continuing to work hard for this community and to go after as much funding opportunities
Absolutely.
as there's available.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief. You have a good night. All right, so our next agenda item is Mark Guilford. He is our cemetery sexton, and I asked him to come in this evening so he can talk to the board a little bit about some of the work that he wants to do in the cemetery, and also for us to be able to support him in his work to...
Do you want him to sit on one of these tables?
No, he
or
can,
in the
he can
front?
sit there, that's fine, because that's far enough away. So anyway, so we want to be able to support him in enforcing some of the town codes that we as selectmen have approved. So thank you very much for coming, Mark. We really appreciate your
You're
time
welcome.
here.
I'm glad to be here. Couple of things I wanted to address. About a month ago on a Saturday morning, I was over there doing some work, doing some lot research and things, and a woman just expressing her concern for the amount of stuff being put on graves. And, you know, it's getting a little out of hand. Most cemeteries don't tolerate that. They would just toss that stuff. So I'd just like to just mention that it is getting overbearing. There's a lot of fencing going in, a lot of barriers, a lot of that are coming out from the flower beds. Most cemeteries are a foot in front of the flower bed. So it is getting a little out of hand, and it gets in the way of the guys that are mowing, trimming. It gets in the way of the contractor who has to dig. It can get in the way of the monument guy when he comes to put up a monument. So it's just getting a little out of hand over there. I know that a lot of that stuff that's put up is very special to the people. You know, you can bury a person, but you can't bury the feelings and the passion of the person. So I know it's a difficult thing. I get that, but just would just like to mention that. I don't know if we can or want to do anything about it. But the second thing is, yes.
Do we have any, I just looked on the website, I didn't see anything about guidelines for, you know, what you can put around the plots. Is there something that we can put together to have posted on our website?
Yeah, you probably could. I think that's something addressed. It probably, there does need to be a new sign when you come in the cemetery, you know, that one hanging up. That definitely needs to be addressed, and we could probably
right.
put that and amend a few of the rules. Yes?
Yeah, maybe I spend too much time in cemeteries than I used to, but yeah, I've seen at most cemeteries, you enter the cemetery and there's a very nice, respectful sign, and it tells you exactly what you can or can't do, including the hours you can come onto the thing, and, you know, when you can, what the hours are, and B, what you're allowed, and also sometimes some of the things are due to the time of year as well.
Yeah.
So, and I think we could follow that same example once we have the policies established.
So I think we've already approved the policies at one of our last meetings. So I guess what I'd like to ask you, Mark, is could you put something together for signage for us to list exactly what you would like to say, and we will see if we can contact, you know, a more permanent sign company and have that posted for you so we can start that off fresh. But what else could we do to assist you or support you in kind of cleaning up the cemetery a little bit? What else can we do for
Well,
you?
the other thing, and I think I mentioned to you at a meeting we were at, was the benches, those granite benches that are in the way now. There's like 6 heavy granite benches that are right in the way. The rules say there's only allowed 1 monument per lot in those granite benches. That's the second monument, so that's already over the rules. But the main thing is the movement of those benches when a grave has to be dug. Who is going to pay for the movement of those benches? Those things, you can't just 2 guys lift those up and move them. All right, and they're going to have to be done in a timely manner. Who's going to pay for it? It's going to have to be the person who owns the bench. Some of those benches are going to have to be moved more than once. The monument company's going to have to come, and they're going to have to move them, put them aside, and then come back and put them back up. And that's going to be time and money. The contractor that digs the graves for us sometimes is in a real pinch. He can't wait for that stuff to be moved. He's got a burial on Friday in Plaistow Cemetery. He might want to dig that grave on Wednesday, depending on and some days he may dig it the day before, depending on his schedule. And who's going to move that bench? It's not up to him, and he don't want to touch those because he damages them. It could fall on him. So that's something I'd like to see. There's about 6 heavy granite ones. Some of the other ones are smaller and can be moved, but they're still in the way of digging. They're still in the way of mowing and trimming, so.
So I know when you and I met about a month ago, we
Yeah.
discussed the possibility of sending letters out to the families who own the benches to respectfully request that they perhaps be moved to a particular area that you saw fit as a seating area, as you know, in the cemetery. Is that something that you would like to move forward with?
We could do that, or suggest that the family buy another lot and put the bench on that other lot. You know, that would be an alternative, too.
All right.
Or place them in certain designated areas in
All
the
right.
cemetery, you know.
All right, so I'm going to ask the board for a consensus before I acknowledge you, Julian. Let's finish this one thing. So if there is a consensus to have Mark move forward in contacting some of these people to make these arrangements, are you comfortable in supporting that?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, okay. And John, okay, so go ahead, Julian.
Yeah, I don't remember voting on the policies.
It was 2 weeks ago. We had 3 policies that we voted on, and it was in the meeting minutes, and Beth is shaking her head yes, so we did it. We did
I remember
do it.
seeing them, I don't remember actually.
Well, all right.
accepting them.
Yep, we did.
Yeah.
So, all right, so we'll send you, I'll take care of, as soon as you get me the verbiage for the sign, I will take responsibility and make sure you get a sign for the cemetery. And then if you want to craft a letter together and copy the board on it as to how you wish to approach these families and what you'd like to do, maybe we can work towards sending that out, and that will give you a little bit of help as we go into the winter months with trying to get your cemetery organized and
Yeah.
easily managed from
Okay,
what you're doing right
appreciate
now.
that.
Yeah. Is there anything else that we can help you with?
No, right now, those are the major issues. I know the new section, I know that's in the planning. I was hoping to get at least the land cleared this year, or the new road in, so.
Yeah, yeah.
But,
Unfortunately, with COVID-19 rearing its ugly head, so many of our projects have been put on hold.
Okay.
And unbelievably, we're still managing to push some of them forward through the town. And I apologize, but you'll have to be a little bit more patient on that, and we're hoping
Okay.
we can get to that sometime next year.
Okay, no problem. Well,
All
thank
right.
you.
Yes. Anything else that you need from us or that you want us to do, or?
No, thank you so much for this.
All right. Well, thank you for being so conscientious about that, and we know how much you care about doing such a good job with it, and we're really fortunate to have you in our town for
thank
this.
you.
Go ahead, Julian, one last
In the
question.
minutes, we talked about it, we discussed it. There never was a motion to approve it. I'm
There
reading the
should
minutes
have
right
been.
now.
There should have
There were
been.
questions we asked and we wanted answered.
And what were the questions?
Well, some of the things, we're trying to review one of the questions that I asked was the rates for the plots.
Yeah, I think we discussed that.
Talked about it, and I thought it was going to go back to the
No,
gentleman
he
here.
gave us the rates.
Yeah,
Those are the ones, but I
I
think
just
we-
thought we should have an increase, that's all,
Yeah.
you know, that's.
Yeah,
it's
and
been-
I believe we did. I believe we put that on the policy. What was it, number 53? And don't forget, these are meeting minute notes. And I think maybe if you go back to the Vimeo, you will see a formal discussion of the rates.
Well, I see the form of discussion of the rates. It's
All
just
right, well,
that
those
we
were the-
never voted to approve. And I know that Beth would not have missed that.
Well, I'm
It doesn't look like we had a vote on any of them. We just agreed.
we
just talked
agreed to
about it.
them? We agreed to them?
I think we just agreed to them.
All right, so there were no, do you want to take a formal vote, Julian? Or I'm not, I actually cannot remember if we did take formal votes to approve all of the other ones we did last year. I think we just said they were okay. So I don't know if we want to change that at this point, but we did discuss them, and the rate increases were as a result of Mark's suggestions. Go ahead.
Francine, there was a lot of discussion about whether the rates were actually high enough and were they competitive with other cemeteries in the area.
Right.
And what I remember was, it was like, okay, let's approve the wording, and basically if there's additional changes to the rates, those can come at a later date.
Thank
So
you.
I think we basically said, yeah, okay, this is fine, but we might want to change some of the rates.
Yeah.
Okay.
To be competitive with cemeteries in our area.
Yeah.
And we kind of felt like the rates that you had recommended compared to what we saw were quite low. was still quite low. And we didn't want to, be exorbitant, but we'd like to be somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
Right, and I believe we also discussed that we don't want to go from 300 to
Correct.
3,000 right away. So that's always subject for discussion, and all of our town codes and policies are always subject for review. So are you comfortable with that, Julian, or?
The concern is since we underfunded it for so many years, the fund.
It is,
And you can only
yes.
spend the interest, there isn't enough fund with the interest rates the way they are to actually maintain it, to pay for the actual maintenance. And the thing is, the more we delay it, the more behind the fund gets. And I'd like to hear the expert's opinion because he is the expert.
I think it is underfunded, absolutely.
And I think I'd like to actually ask Greg Colby, because I was looking that up, and I think we have a cemetery trust fund. We have a couple of them, and when I was reading about the cemetery funds, maybe I have the wrong fund, but it didn't say that you were only allowed to spend the interest. So could you clarify some of that for us if you can, Greg, or if not, we'll look at it at another meeting?
Well, I can add that either, I believe the March 2019 meeting, the voters voted to establish a special revenue fund whereby the perpetual care money was going into a special revenue fund from this point forward to be able to spend on maintenance projects and the like at the cemetery.
Not preclude spending only interest, is that correct?
That is correct.
All right,
I
okay.
was just going with Jill Center way back, who was the thing that said that we could not spend the principal. I don't think the Warren article took the money that already existed. I thought this was a new fund. The new fund doesn't have the money from the principal of the previous fees.
That is correct.
Yeah, you can't.
It's just the new money going forward.
New money from the town, yeah.
All right.
So that would not cover the cost.
That's happened to a lot of cemeteries in here, where you spend the principal and now they have nothing.
I think New Hampshire law doesn't allow us to spend the principal.
So, okay, go ahead, Greg.
Okay, so it seems to me that if we're basically saying these rates possibly are too low, could you propose some new rates that are at least somewhere in the median of what other local cemeteries are charging, and come back to the board with that, or send it to the chair so we can discuss that?
And they'll try and
That's what they usually do. When they're
allow,
going to raise rates, they contact the other side, what do you get? You do that.
Yeah.
Atkinson.
sure?
I'm going to just interrupt this meeting. John Blinn, I'm hearing background people in your sphere of influence. You need to be alone, as we discussed. So I'm not sure what's going on back there, but we keep hearing feedback from other people in the room with you.
There was somebody just passing through, my daughter.
Okay. All right.
She's gone.
All right, okay. All right, just making sure. All right, so would you be willing to do that then, Mark, is give us some more recommendations? Because like I said, I don't want to increase it so drastically that people are not going to be able to pay for it either.
And just to be clear, that's not my intention, but
Yeah,
it
no,
has
I
to-
understand
It
that.
has to be financially, fiscally sound going forward at some point.
So perhaps we may want to consider, and then this is a discussion for Greg and Mark, probably by the end of this month, if we may need to consider a warrant article to fund this perpetual care so that there's a little bit more money in it, but that's a discussion, I think, for another board meeting.
Because I think
All right.
right now, basically, I think the highway funds have basically been doing the maintenance in order
right.
to get the things mowed and things like that.
All right, so we'll look into that, and in the meantime, if we can get the signage and get the letters, that will be another step forward to supporting you in the cemetery. So thank you so much for coming. And if
Thank
the
you.
board,
Mark,
okay,
you're
wait a
welcome.
second. Jay has one more question for you,
Yes.
sorry.
So if someone were interested in getting a plot, how would they go about doing that? Would they call the town hall? Is there a form that would need to be filled out?
No, there's no form. It's usually either somebody calls, leaves a message on my machine or through email and just say, I want to buy a lot, and I'll meet them over the cemetery. How many graves do you want? And we'll just look over the place, and they'll pick 1, 2, 3, whatever it is.
Okay.
And no, there's no forms. All there is when they decide on Section B, lot whatever, 2 and 3, that's what we put down on a receipt, and then they get a deed that will state that they bought, such and such a plots, 1, 2, 3, 4, right now, $425 apiece,
Okay. All right,
Yeah.
thank you.
I think
All
Mr.
right.
Guilford's phone number and email are both on our website.
Yep.
Yes.
They are, yeah.
Yes, it is.
All right, so thank you, sir, for coming in. We really appreciate your time, and hopefully we'll be able to move this stuff forward.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, so next
Coming.
item agenda is Greg and Jay DeRoche put together an IT project to kind of discuss some of the little glitches that we've been having with some of our remote meetings. So I'm going to turn this next portion over to Jay and to Greg, but Jay, I guess you attended the meeting, so I guess the floor is yours.
Yeah, so we've had some difficulty with some of the remote meetings and some of the microphone issues and stuff like that. So Greg had put together a nice document kind of outlining the various issues. He was away last week, so I met with the vendors and we discussed some of those issues and that they would be, potentially coming up with a POC to see what our current capabilities are and what tools we already have that we can reuse to come up with a solid solution where we're not dropping people from calls or we're having bandwidth issues or whatnot. But in speaking with Dean, and I hadn't talked to him before that meeting, but in speaking to Dean, it sounds like he's kind of cleaned up some of those issues, but there's still a little more we can do to tighten that up. So I left it with them that they would reach out to Greg Colby and come up with some type of proposal just to do this POC to see what we can do to accomplish this. So that should be going his way this week.
Okay, great.
The other piece of this was to provide a reasonable Wi-Fi signal in the town hall. Part of the problems that we had originally was that we were trying to do video conferencing over the Wi-Fi versus directly connected into the network through a cable. And what was happening was, first of all, the Wi-Fi signal is very weak, and secondly, it keeps on dropping by any interference inside of the building. And I know this is an old building, but there's no reason in the world that we cannot have a reasonable Wi-Fi atmosphere within the entire building through current repeaters and access points and whatnot. So that's part of that, and I know it's not part of the video type thing, it's part of the telecommunication type thing. So that is a second piece. And I'm hoping that with what Dean has already done since then, and what the IT group can help us support, that they would at some point be asked to come to the Board of Selectmen and explain to us, here's the status of the project. Here's what we have completed, here's what's left to be done, and, just kind of let us understand that, yes, this problem is now solved and we have a reliable video and we have good Wi-Fi within the building for the town employees to be able to utilize.
All right. So may I ask the both of you to kind of just keep your finger on the pulse of that and just follow up with it and let us know when they're ready to present to us
Absolutely.
their solutions. All right, so thank you guys both for jumping in to do this in extra duties, along with all the other selectmen duties that you have. So thank you for working on this and making it a little bit better. Okay, so go ahead, Julian.
While we're talking about the IT project, I have heard concern from other boards of the inability to run remote meetings. Or, in my case, I was actually refused a remote meeting because it wasn't a televised meeting at one point. And I thought the whole intention of buying the new software and everything was so that any meeting could have remote access, so members could attend the meeting.
Yeah, good point.
And I ended up doing the old by the phone trick. But I couldn't hear what the other people were saying really, because it was just a little speakerphone. But I think that's something we have to address going forward to the future. It's something we probably really should have had even before this COVID-19. That ability has always been there.
Yeah.
It's always been allowed by RSA. And I think this is the time to get it squared away and make it so that any meeting any chair can start the meeting so they get it remotely without having to even have Dean or somebody here.
I agree. So that might, once these guys finish off with their project, that's definitely something that we should be putting on the board for discussion.
Yes.
Regardless of whether it's televised or not, I agree, there should be access to all remote meetings. So that's a good point. Go ahead, guys.
To finalize that, that is the actual purpose or goal of this little project, to have a video conferencing capability, so any committee or board would be able to utilize it. And then separate from that, we have brand-new telephone systems coming in. So our understanding was we were going to get new conference telephones. So just with the telephone, being able to put it on speaker
Yeah.
and be able to have people dial in and conference into that number is what you were suggesting, Julian, is that minimally they would be able to do that if there wasn't going to be a video
The video's
call.
not necessary, as long as there's a
Exactly.
two-way conversation.
Exactly.
So we got two different pieces being done, and one of the projects Mark has already mentioned to us has got delayed with our new
IT vendor.
the Comcast account, not account, but contract we have now. They were supposed to be putting these in, and they basically said, "Oh no, we're too busy. We can't finish it."
Yeah, and to add to that, we have, as a town, had let's say the issue or the problem of inability to get people to participate in our community, in our
Yep.
community government.
Yep.
And a lot of that has been working people, I can't get here by 5 o'clock, I can't get here by
Yep.
6:30.
And that would absolve that whole
This
issue.
would absolve that problem.
Right.
We could get good members, good participants to help in projects like the Energy Committee. There's people that want to do certain things, but they're not going to get here at 5 o'clock in a weekday.
Yep.
And this gives them, they could even be sitting in their office at work
Yep.
before they leave, and even with a phone, sitting in a parking lot in a car and participate in the meeting, because the technology is there. You don't have to be a rocket scientist.
Yep.
You turn on the app, it works.
Okay.
So
So I
this
think
is a good thing.
we're all agreed that this is something that we should move forward with, and as soon as you guys get more information, we will definitely have a board discussion on that. But that was an excellent point that you brought up, Julian, so thank you for
Great,
that.
Jean.
Go ahead, Jay, yeah.
We do have the go-to meeting capabilities right now, and I thought that was sent out to all the committee chairs, that we do have that capability, and you don't need it to be able to, if you're not televised, you should still have the ability to use that. I don't know what the protocol is for who you contact to get that set up, and that might be going through potentially Dean or Beth, but those capabilities are there where on a go-to meeting, you can set up a reoccurring meeting for, say, the planning board, and that same link will work at, you can set up a time, 6 PM. They click the link at 6 PM every other Wednesday or whatever the frequency is, and you can access that meeting. So we do have those capabilities in place. I think
it
we
might
just
be
need to
good
get
to-
the word out on how to
Utilize them.
utilize it and set it up.
And I think there might be a little bit of reluctance for people not being familiar with how to use it, and then that's part of it. Go ahead,
I
Julian,
think
yeah.
that's what I'm getting to my
Oh,
point.
right.
Maybe we should have a training session possibly set up somehow for all the chairs and vice chairs of committees, so that they're comfortable with it, show them how to do it
That's a good idea,
firsthand,
too.
And
Yep.
then they
Great
won't have
idea.
that fear
Yep.
any longer.
We'll
And
do
of course,
it
you
on
have to
a-
make sure we have a computer here we can do that with.
Do it on a
Whatever.
go-to meeting.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
That's one of the goals, Julian, that we have in this project, was to provide a simple and short training session for chairs of the town boards and committees on utilizing the new system. So
Perfect.
absolutely. yeah.
So it looks like we're all in sync with our
Yes.
thinking, which is great, so that's very good. So just wait till you guys get more information back. All right, so if nobody has any more discussion on that, I'm just going to move forward with election protocols. Last Tuesday, we had a meeting at the Public Works Garage with the police and fire chiefs, as well as our health officer, our buildings and grounds department head, our town clerk, and our town moderator to discuss the upcoming elections. So it's my understanding that the Board of Selectmen picked the venue, but the town moderator chooses the execution of how this is being done. And there was a general consensus that the Public Works Garage would probably be the most appropriate venue for this for a number of reasons, primarily being that the school board only approved the gym, not any other structures within the school. And with the social distancing, it would have been kind of a nightmare to try to execute this. So we discussed that the Public Works would be the most appropriate. We've gotten ancillary parking from Methuen Construction. Mark indicated that he would put a binder coat of pavement on the rough stuff back there so that people could park there as well. We also have a dedicated PPE station so that things are going to be disposable. We're going to give everybody disposable pens, gloves, masks if they need them, and also placemats so they can put the placemats on the tables, fill out their ballots, and throw everything away and just dump their ballots, in, so we don't have to have somebody there sanitizing every pen like we did in March. So it seems like it's a really good plan. I know Martha is meeting with the Secretary of State, I think, Thursday, and I have a webinar with that as well. And I think I gave you the webinar information to look at absentee ballots. We're looking at approximately 900 people for this September balloting. So this is a great dress rehearsal for us, so that if there's any kinks or issues, we can kind of work them out before the big voting that's going to come in November. We will need to be calibrating the voting machines, and I hope I'm not talking out of turn, but I think Martha would like to calibrate them here. And Jay, that'll be something that you're going to need to see, because this will be your first time to do that. And for next meeting, I'd like to also ask you all if we could have a schedule similar to the one that we had in March, where we have like 6 hours apiece and with 2 or 3 hours of overlap with everyone. And for November, if anyone, and I will reiterate this again, if anyone would like to be sworn in and deputized to help us, we really could use the help, because a lot of our ballot clerks are elderly and are very reluctant to come into public contact, and I don't blame them. So we'll talk about that a little bit more as we get more information on our 24th meeting. But that's where we stand so far. So I believe we need to have a formal motion on the floor to approve the Public Works Garage as the voting venue for September and November. So if somebody could
I'll make the motion to
thanks.
use the Public Works Garage for future elections.
Okay, thank you. And could I have a second on that?
Second the motion.
All right, so Greg's going to second that. So if there's no more further discussion, Jay, go ahead, discuss.
So he said future elections, so we're going to use it for every election or just during the COVID period?
Would you like to refine that until COVID is over? It's up to you guys. What do you think?
We leave it open to use. That's all we're doing, allow it to use, and then the moderator can make that call each time, and if we have to change that, we can change it then.
Okay, I'm
Are you
fine with
okay
that.
with that then? Are you all set with that? All right.
It's an available venue.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
The
is.
next
And-
election is even bigger, so it's definitely
Yeah,
going to be the
yeah.
highway garage.
Yeah.
So that's
And
at
I-
least 2 elections.
No, I'm just talking about maybe next year, when maybe if this all clears up,
Yeah,
we go
moderator can
back,
make-
are we going back to Pollard School?
Yep,
Moderator can
and,
make that call.
yep, and that's a decision that the board can make is, okay, we're going to change the venue back to Pollard School or whatever. But I think that's Mark's thoughts when he was actually building and designing this building, was that was Plan B for a number of meeting venues. And luckily, and thank God that we were able to do that, because we would be up a creek if we didn't have that right
I
now.
believe these extra materials and pens are going to be covered under the COVID-19
Yes, they are.
project as well.
Yes,
So it's
yep.
not costing the town any more
Yep,
money.
excellent, yep. And so we discussed actually having COVID kits, but then if people come in with masks and their own stuff, we didn't want to waste the supplies. So I think there's going to be a dedicated station where people will get that stuff when they come in. But I'll have more information for you guys at our next
Yeah,
meeting.
definitely have available masks, because they come in and they don't have it, we can't just say, you can't vote.
No, we'll give them masks. Okay, so if there's no, go ahead, Jay.
So the next, never mind. I was just going to say the primary is the 8th of
Yes.
September.
November.
It's on a long weekend,
Yes,
Tuesday after the long weekend. I'm planning to reach out to Bob to see whatever he needs, because this is a different venue than we've had in the past.
it
and
is.
Different situations, so I think
Great.
he might need extra hands to help.
You might help them initially setting up too, because
Yeah.
it'll be different.
And
it
there
set
was, there was also thought, now that you just triggered my memory, that there's a huge amount of absentee ballots. So I probably should encourage the public who are listening tonight, if you're at all concerned about coming down here personally, we would definitely encourage you to do an absentee ballot. You can do the same thing in November. And Martha has a whole bunch of them already right now. We're only allowed to open the exterior envelopes at this point, but we're trying to move the Secretary of State a little bit further to say, gee, can we at least open the internal envelopes and try to get a little jump start on all of these absentee ballots, because that's going to cause huge issues in the November primary. So we won't know that until the end of this week, until Thursday. So hopefully by our next meeting, I'll have some more specific information for you guys. So okay, go ahead.
Well, quick question. What is the current guideline for someone not wanting to wear a mask to come into the voting area?
There will be two areas. There'll be an area for people that don't wear a mask, or an unmasked area. So that's,
okay.
and then there's going to be a masked area. So there will be two separate areas within, that's by the,
Yeah.
Okay, thank
by
you.
the state.
That's what I want to
So-
know. Good.
Yeah, and we are going to strongly encourage, but we can't force them, so,
but there'll be an area for
yeah. So
folks.
good. So if
What
this,
about the people that are working that area, that are unmasked?
there won't be, trust me. There will not be unmasked people working.
So I'm getting an understanding here, because I wasn't able to go to that meeting, that there's going to be a separate line for people who don't want a mask, or am I misinterpreting this?
No,
If someone comes to vote and they don't want to wear a mask, we'll have a separate area that they can get their ballot, and they'll be able to go vote.
Okay,
And
but
they'll
somebody
they'll go
has
to this
to-
one area and exit out the back of that area.
But there is somebody there that has to do the checking for the people that are unmasked. That's my concern.
yes,
Well,
but the check,
folks working, yeah.
yeah, they're going to have
be-
masks.
They're going to be protected.
Right. All right, so if there's no more discussion on this, I'd like to call, we had the vote, we had a second about the venue. And so could you give us a roll call, Beth?
Ms. Hart?
Yes.
Italian?
Yes.
Mr. Kishka?
Yes.
Mr. Glenn?
John, are you there?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, thank you.
He's probably muted.
All right, so, okay, so that motion will carry 5-0-0, so our venue is changed to the Public Works Garage. We're going to put signs out everywhere, we're going to list it on the town website, and I saw a sign already outside of Town Hall where it's going to be changed. And I think we're going to put something out, Jay, do you recall, we're going to put it out at the school as well? To
I
make
believe
sure.
so. They were going to put
Yeah,
signage
okay.
up there to direct people to the highway garage.
Okay, all right, so I think we've got it covered, but we'll just double check at our next meeting to make sure. Okay, so next item on the agenda, as promised from our last meeting, is auditor recommendations. So at our last meeting, we had a very lively discussion about removing the elected town auditors from our ballot. So Greg and I, after that meeting, scheduled a meeting with our town council and explained to him our process, the fact that we have 3 auditors in town, and we also referenced 4131-9.
B, yep.
B, all right. That indicated that if we have not hired a town auditor, then an elected town auditor would be on the ballot. So he recommended that we speak to the DRA directly, and I believe I forwarded to you all of the email correspondences back and forth between Sumner Coleman and myself and Greg and the DRA. And our DRA auditor, Jamie Dow, indicated that it was a very clean and simple thing to just remove that position from the ballot. So it seems to be a real clean, simple, easy do. And I discussed it with Martha Fowler, and she was fine with that. But I would like to memorialize that and document that by taking a formal vote so that it is part of our open, transparent town government and that people know exactly what's going on.
So
Greg,
the
did you
motion-
want to have?
Yeah, I was just going to say the motion would be, is now back on the floor, would be back on the floor.
Yes. Could you
Sure.
motion, please?
Certainly. Whereas RSA 41:31B states any municipality that has not hired an auditor under RSA 21-J:19 shall at an annual meeting under an article in the warrant choose one or more auditors. Whereas the town of Plaistow has employed a certified public accounting firm, Plotzik and Sanderson, for many, many years, it is incorrect and in violation of RSA 41:31B to have two auditors elected on the ballot in March of 2020. And whereas it would be incorrect to put a warrant to the articles to give them the option to either follow the statute or choose to be in violation of it, therefore, I make a motion to cancel the terms of both elected auditors at the end of the town's fiscal year and to direct the town clerk to comply with RSA 41:31-B and remove these two positions from the ballot for the 2021 town elections.
All right, if that's the whole motion, I'm going to ask you to kindly submit that written copy to Beth
Yep.
so that she can make sure that it's motioned properly. And so may I have a second on that motion, please? Anybody? No? All right, I'll second the motion to move it forward. So if there's no further discussion, go ahead, Jay.
So I'm going to vote no on this, and I'm going to tell you why. In the verbiage that says, any municipality that has not hired an auditor under RSA 21J9 shall, at the annual meeting under the article, choose one or more auditors. And that word shall is really sticking with me. And what I'm interpreting as is that it's not telling us we can't, and it's not telling us we can, but it's not saying because we have an outside firm that we're paying to do this, that we can't have an elected auditor.
Can you read that first sentence again? Because I think it states that if you have not hired an auditor, you shall. So that's what did it for me. Read it again out loud. Read the first sentence of it.
Any municipality that has not hired.
Right, which we have.
Right, we have one.
hired it. So if we haven't hired one, we shall do an elected auditor. But that's certainly your privilege to vote no on that.
Mm-hmm.
But the way I'm interpreting and understanding that is if you have not hired someone to do your town books, then you must have elected town auditors.
Okay.
Go ahead, Greg.
The other reason,
Oh, all right, go
well,
ahead, Jay.
there's still more to
Go ahead.
my note. The other reason I think it might be helpful is you're having another set of eyes. So if we remove those positions, you're getting rid of a set of eyes to look at, other things as well. So I'm going to vote no on this, but my suggestion would be is, maybe we put this to the voters to weigh in on this. But, I just feel like we shouldn't do away with this. We've had a firm since, I don't know, what, 92?
Mm-hmm.
We've had town auditors for a long time. So I don't see what removing it at this point is any harm or foul.
Okay, so I'm going to let Greg answer that, and then Julian, you can go next.
So if there are elected auditors, it's very clear the DRA requires them to fill out the M60 report, and it basically explains to them what they need to be able to do. So they need to sit down with, just as an example, the town treasurer and come up with a couple of transactions as examples to put down to make sure that the process is working correctly. It doesn't say you can go off and just look at anything. It basically says this is specifically what you are looking to do. Since the town has had elected auditors, and this goes way back, even more further, the M60 has never been filled out, has never been complied with. So basically, we have elected auditors not following the rules, and basically are, in many cases, are not, I don't want to say qualified, but not experienced, and are not certified to be able to look at financial information and make a good recommendation. Just as a simple example, In some of the town reports, you will notice that they are signing this little blurb that says the town is following generally accepted accounting practices. To be able to make that statement, you need to be a certified public accountant to be able to come to that conclusion. Because if you are brought into a court of law, they basically say, what is the qualifications that you have to be able to determine that? Somebody who has the background in accounting wouldn't be able to make that statement. Someone who's not just a general elected person from the town would not have that capability. So we're putting them in a bad space. We're putting an elected person that may or may not have this experience in a bad space because we're basically saying, well, you're certifying that the town's following the financial rules. So that's one additional concern that I have. If we have a specific definition of what elected town auditors should be doing, and they're not doing that, well, then there's a problem with that. And then secondly, I believe the intent of the statute is to make sure that every municipality has some type of auditing process. What they would like is for every town, every municipality to have a certified accounting firm looking at their books and making sure that the town is doing the right thing with their accounting and everything is being followed. And if it's a very, very small town, they can't afford, if you have a town with 300 people, they're saying, all right, if you can't afford a CPA firm, then we recommend that you pick a couple of elected town officials and fill out the M60 form and follow through the process that we're going to give you to be able to check that there is at least some overview that the town is following generally accepted accounting practices. So we are in a state where we have an accounting firm that is certified, that is going through the books. They're looking at our finances, and they are certifying and are willing to be able to go to a court of law and say, yes, we looked at the books, and yes, they were okay. Okay. And so that's the reason. And I agree with Francine. This is basically saying if you don't have an accounting firm, then you need to have elected auditors, not both. And when we have discussed this with the Department of Revenue Accounting, they said, why does Plaistow have 3 auditors? You only need 1. You already have an accounting firm. You don't need elected auditors. That's over and above.
Okay, I'm going to, before you answer, Julian's had his hand up, so I'm going to let Julian talk, and then Jay, you can speak. Go ahead, Julian.
Okay, I can't argue with all this logic, so to speak. Just because something says shall do something, it doesn't mean you can't, the negative doesn't always apply, for one thing. That's going back in the related conversation. The other thing is, the first year we had a paid auditor was 1992.
I'm sorry, what?
The first time we had a paid auditor was 1992.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to give you a little history here. In 1993, it was petitioned to remove the town auditors, the elected town auditors. No one knows what happened to that. I always thought a petition had to go on. Now, 1994, it did go on the ballot. It was Article 33, and the voters said not to remove the elected by a vote of 105 to 33. Now, if you want to follow some other laws, no means the voters said no, and we are not giving them the opportunity to revote. I know that small elections, 33 to 105, and it's 26 years ago.
Yep.
And the voters today may have a different opinion, but the voters at that time said, no, you will not remove the auditors. So we are not violating the no means no, in essence, because the voters said do not remove them.
All right, I'm just going to jump in there before I let Jay do that. They're violating an RSA statute by allowing them to vote. So that was my concern, is you can't allow the taxpayers to violate statutes. And if this was an appointed position, like we did with our treasurer, and I know we had that discussion last year about electing versus appointing a treasurer, they clearly have to have financial expertise to be able to do their job. And this is a very similar situation. And unfortunately, some of the state laws and statutes are not very clear. But in my opinion, in reading this, and also with the DRA's interpretation of this, it appears as if we either have one or the other. We either have someone that we're paying for, or we elect someone. And the real issue is that, as you know, Greg had intimated, sometimes any one of us can sign a name to a line on a ballot, whether we are necessarily qualified or have knowledge, skill, and ability to perform this job. And so you put the town potentially at risk, and you also, in my opinion, violate a statute. And as far as I'm concerned, if the DRA made that ruling, they're the ones that we have to report to with auditing practices. So I am going to listen to them, and maybe, you know, Greg Colby is a CPA who also does our books. If you would like to weigh in on a little bit of that, and then I'll get back to you, Jay.
All I can say is I've been contacted several times by DRA wanting to know why the town still does both. And then they also noted, as was mentioned earlier, the MS-60 has not been completed, and unless that is done, they will be issuing a notice of non-compliance, they said this year, so.
All right, so I think that to me, in my opinion, is pretty definitive. I'm going to just let Jay have one last word on it before we vote, and go ahead, Jay.
Well, so two things. To what Greg was saying about them having to be a CPA, and it says it right in the RSA, they don't need to be a certified accountant, and they cannot emulate a certified public accountant by signing off on that verbiage that says this is, they're in compliance. So there is some leeway there with that. But if we haven't been filling out the MS-60, are our town auditors going to start filling out the MS-60? When is that due by?
Greg?
I'm
still going to go back to the
do
DRA
them.
recommendations, but go ahead.
Most forms are due by March 31st. I'd have to look it up specifically, though. I'm not 100% sure.
All right, I really don't want to belabor this discussion, so Julian, you've got 2
So
minutes for
you
the
bring-
last
all right.
word before we vote.
I'll give it 2 minutes, all right.
Yep.
We have, for one thing, what form do the paid auditors fill out? Don't they fill something out?
They fill out MS-60.
It's supposed to be the MS-60, and they have not filled it out for the last 10 years.
That's not the question he's asking.
Oh, the paid auditors.
The CPA firm fills out a formal review of all of the financial books of the town, the financial statements of the town. So they actually write up,
If
have
I
you ever
may-
seen?
So who's going to sign it going forward if you get rid of the positions?
No, no, wait, stop. The auditors never signed that form. It is the representatives of our CPA firm that signs that form.
So someone does sign it.
What the CPA firm, what the elected auditors were signing was a little blurb inside the town report that, yeah, I certify that the town is following generally accepted accounting practices. That's what I'm talking about, okay? And one additional comment is when you put this forth on a ballot, on a warrant, you can't explain why. You have basically half of the question. It's like, should we have auditors? They're going to say, of course we should have auditors. You can't say, we have a CPA firm and we're paying them X amount of dollars to analyze the financial statements of the town. And from DRA, they're basically telling us we don't need elected auditors if that's what you're doing. You can't put that inside the warrant. So the warrant is basically like half of a question. You can't explain it to them to say, this is why we're doing this. You just say, does the town want to get rid of its auditors? And of course they're going to say no, because you can't explain it.
Well, you're saying that the paid auditor should be signing that.
The paid auditors sign their financial report. Have you ever seen any of them?
Yeah, but they're signing the MS-60.
No, no.
They're signing a very formal document from their company having evaluated the financial records of the town.
Okay, so that's something that needs to be fixed. Someone has to sign the MS-60. That's the bottom.
No, you do not have to fill out the MS-60 unless you have elected auditors. So a small town, if you have a small town and you can't afford a CPA firm, you have elected auditors, and then their job, based on what the DRA is recommending, is that they use this MS-60 to go through the books of the town in some way, provide some type of transparency and some type of checking to say, here are some examples, and we believe from that it's likely that they're following the rules.
So for 26 years, we haven't been following this, and now we're finding out?
That's right.
Correct.
That's
Absolutely
right.
correct.
That's
26
the
years it took
issue.
our government to figure that out, to tell us. the
Yes,
right
yes. So
time. I
Greg,
find fault in that myself.
well, Greg, I'm going to give you the last word if you wish to have one, but otherwise I'm going to, it's been motioned and seconded, so I'm going to call for a vote unless you have something additional to add or not.
I mean, all I was gonna say is the auditors, just to clarify, do not fill out the MS-60, the paid auditors that we hire the firm. They issue an opinion on the financial statements and help us compile into that book form, if you will, the financial statements of the town. And they give the opinion on the financial statements to say that they're fairly stated in all material respects.
All right, thank you. All right, so without further
hear
discussion on
from
this. Pardon?
John have anything to say?
I don't know. John, do you want to weigh in on this, or are you just going to vote?
I'm just going to vote.
Okay.
I have my mind made up.
Okay. All right, so all those in favor of going with the recommendation of the DRA, say roll call. Yes.
Ms. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Talian?
Yes.
Mr. Kishka?
No.
Mr. Blend?
No.
Mr. DeRoche?
All right, so the motion fails. So that means that we are going to require our elected town auditors to complete the MS-60. And if they do not do so, they will be in violation. Is that correct, Greg?
That is correct.
All right. All right. Okay, so along with Julian, yes.
Well, I still think there's some issues that resolved in this category of discussion. I also saw in there somewhere that they're supposed to be staggered
Terms.
terms.
Yes.
That is something we have never done, even though it says to it. So if they stay, we should correct that. We should probably if it stays, the next election we should have said is one's a 2-year, one's a 1-year, so they can start the staggered term thing.
Yep.
And
There's been a
B,
lot of violations on
I
this.
still think it should go to the voters as a warrant article. If the voters want to get rid of it, I will go along with it. If voters want to get rid of it, then I will go with it.
I think it begs more discussion with the DRA. I really do, because it's clear to me that that is a violation of a statute, and we can't allow taxpayers to violate statutes. That's very clear to
I
me.
just don't see how it's a violation of their statute.
Well, it says if you have a paid auditor, you do not need elected ones. And it says unless you do not have a paid auditor, then you must have town
I
auditors.
agree with the second part. I don't agree with the first part.
Well, they're mutually
You can't just
exclusive.
reverse something and make it true.
All right, well, enough on this discussion. The motion failed, so we will address it with the DRA as we see fit, or the DRA will address it with the town, I guess, as they see fit. So following on the heels of that, I'm going to throw this out to the board because it sort of follows in on this. I'm not sure if you as a board would like to discuss, Peter Bracci had sent the board several requests in an email about a week ago that kind of ties into some of this stuff. And I did forward that information to you. You did get it from him. Do you wish to discuss his requests at this meeting, or would you like me to table this until our next meeting?
Which one?
The one that requesting stipends, prior stipends, and email
I'd rather
accounts.
discuss that now. I think
Do you
it
want
should
to
be-
discuss? I'm just going to take
I
a
think it
quick,
should be discussed in public as well.
it is going to be discussed in public. Do you want to do it now or at our next meeting?
I think it's a simple issue, and we should be able to resolve it.
Now or later?
I think we should do it now.
All right. What do you think, guys? You want to do it now?
Table it.
John, what do you think? Now or table?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it now.
All right, so we'll do it now. All right, so the three requests that Peter Bracci had, I believe the first request was to request a stipend for himself and for Bob Hamilton as elected town auditors. And I believe it's my understanding that our stipends are due in September. So if the board is agreeable to that, and we'll get Greg to weigh in on this, we should probably provide the stipends to the elected town auditors at that point in time. However, they are going to have to fill out paperwork before they get paid. So Greg, is that okay with you? Is that appropriate?
Most of the stipends that we do pay now are paid on a quarterly basis. So we can
Okay.
certainly add, I believe there's $100 each in the budget. We can certainly pay it out in $25 increments quarterly going forward.
Okay, so does that mean that for this third quarter, they would get $75 apiece?
Yes, I would say
Okay.
that's the case.
All right, okay, so I don't have any problem with that unless you guys object to it. Go ahead.
I was brought to my attention that one of the auditors hadn't been paid last year.
That's the
I don't
second
know-
request.
All right, second,
So hold off on
Hold
that.
off on it.
All right. So if you guys are agreeable, go ahead, Greg.
So I heard two different numbers. Is the amount that we paid to Gary Ingham and
Jim Peck.
Jim Peck, $100 each? I had
I'm
heard,
not sure. It's either 100 or 200. I will make sure of that before we issue any checks.
okay.
All right. And I will make sure, I will email both gentlemen and make sure they come down to Town Hall to fill out their I-9 so that they can be paid. Okay?
I think the Warren article that I read today mentioned $200, but I guess you still check.
Yeah, he does need to check.
Yeah, and-
All right.
Right.
All right. So the second request was Peter had requested Bob Hamilton's stipend from 2019, including interest. I have two personal comments to make about that, but I'm going to throw it out to the floor if anybody wishes to comment about that.
Go ahead.
First,
Madam Chair,
yeah, go ahead, John.
why is it we haven't paid? Because they didn't make out a form?
I believe so. It was not requested, and financial information was not filled out in 2019 by Mr. Hamilton. My personal points on this, I have 2 points, is first of all, I don't believe that that is Peter's issue or concern to be asking for stipends for another person. And the other issue that I see is that these funds were not encumbered in 2019 to be paid out in 2020. And so as far as I'm concerned, those funds lapsed at the end of the year, December 31st, 2019. So that's my opinion of it. Go ahead, Julian.
I'm just an opinion, it's not a large amount of money. If the town should just pay what they owe. If the paperwork got messed up, I don't know whether they got the request to fill the paperwork, or they didn't do it, or someone didn't ask them to do it, but either way, the town should just pay what they owe.
Go ahead, Greg.
So every year we create a budget
Yeah.
to take care of our expenses. And at the end of the year, any money that's not spent from the budget goes into the general fund. So basically, the money that you're talking about for last year has already been gone, is in the general fund. It's in the
Yeah.
unassigned account balance. We can't just draw off that. We can't draw off that. And Francine is correct. We didn't encumbrance that. Basically, it was a responsibility of the elected official to fill out the paperwork, just like we all did to get our stipend. And it was his responsibility to do that.
But I was also asked to do it. I don't know
No,
that happened.
no,
I don't know
no.
that happened.
I wasn't asked to do it. I took the initiative.
I was.
The point
I
is
was
that
told when I
you,
did it, here's the paperwork.
the
Please
point
fill it
is
out.
you don't want to start a double standard. If we're going to do encumbrances the way we're supposed to do them, we had a big discussion about properly being done and taking time to look at them in December. We created a whole different motion about looking at encumbrances early in the year to make sure they were done properly and completely. You're looking at a double standard right now, and I am not willing to do that.
So if I do the sidewalks at Town Hall, and I don't send you the bill till next year, and if it's not encumbered, I don't have to pay you?
Right. That's right. That's why we did this whole big thing.
Wouldn't want to do business with this town.
Well, we luckily have people who are very conscientious and very proactive about looking at bills and doing things the right way. But you can't have a double standard as far as I'm concerned. We follow the rules all the time for everybody, no matter what. And that's my opinion on it. Go ahead, Jay.
If he didn't fill out the form, then I think everyone has to do that gets a stipend. If it's
Right.
not filled out, it's lost.
Right.
I suggest you fill it out. I don't know if he was emailed to do it and he didn't do it, or if he didn't know he had to do it, or whatever, but at this point in time, those funds are gone. The only thing we can do now is have him fill out the proper paperwork and
Yep.
move forward from that.
And I personally will email them and make sure they understand what forms they do need to fill out to get paid, so hopefully that won't happen in the future.
Someone had told me when I became, when I first ran for selectman, I didn't even know that he got a stipend. And I didn't know until after I was elected that I was going to get something. And if someone hadn't come to me and say, fill out the form, I wouldn't have done it. So I'm just leaving it that. I don't know
Well,
what the history is.
and that's your opinion, and you can certainly voice that opinion, but that is not the standard of the law, and we are going to abide by encumbrances in the law. So, in that respect, the last thing that we need, that Peter brought
I
up,
don't know. What's the end decision here?
the decision is that the funds were not encumbered, and they are not going to be paid
For last year.
for last year.
No,
for
wait,
2019.
stop. One of the elected officials who was, elected auditors, who was the only elected auditor last year, he would not receive his stipend for last year, because that has elapsed.
Right.
But both of the elected auditors this year would both receive their stipend if they fill out the paperwork. And when I became, this is just personal information, when I became a selectman, I sat down with Laurie Sedowich, and she went through all the paperwork, had me sign everything. I did know about the stipend, but I never needed to even ask for it. But I did realize I needed other things. I needed to sign other information and get the key card and whatnot. So that's a responsibility. That's a responsibility.
So, I
And
don't-
I think those responsibilities should go to the person that would be getting paid.
So how is this a decision made when we didn't even vote?
Do you want to vote?
Let's vote on it. Let's make it official, one way or the other.
I disagree on that, because I think you're getting into violations of the law. The encumbrances are very clear. The law is very clear on the encumbrances, and if they were not encumbered funds, they lapse,
Well, I wanna
period,
ask
Julian.
Our financial expert.
Go ahead.
Is it against
Greg?
the law to pay someone what they're owed?
That's not the question. The
is the
question is, did the encumbrance lapse?
Would it be, here's the question, would we be violating the law?
Stop.
Wait,
Let
wait.
them
If we
speak.
Let
Hey,
Greg
let him
answer. Let Greg answer.
Technically, yes, the money that was raised as part of last year's budget was not encumbered, and therefore it lapsed. Technically, the board could take a vote, though, to pay them for last year out of the current year budget money. And it would have to come out of this year's budget money if they so decided.
Okay, so do you want to put a motion on the floor?
That's my understanding.
Well, then put a motion on the floor.
I make a motion on the floor that we pay the last year's town auditor what he was owed. I'm not
Okay.
saying anything about interest, just what he was, the
Okay.
stipend that he was owed.
Okay, and can I have a second on that?
I second the motion.
Okay, so can we have a roll call vote on that, Beth? No.
No.
Mr. Kishko?
Yes.
Mr. Glenn?
Mr. Blinn?
Yes.
Mr. DeRoche?
No.
Okay, so the motion fails.
It fails.
All right. So the last thing that we need to discuss is Peter had asked for a town email. And I believe Greg had some information regarding that, because there is a cost to people having town emails. So Greg, if you wouldn't mind kind of just walking us through what you found, that would be great.
So the cost of an email account with the town is $200 a year. So that would be $400 for two people who don't really have a lot of communication with the town. We have lots of people who are on the budget, the planning, the zoning, communicating with town employees, whatnot, with their own personal email. So I don't recommend the town take that particular expense. We had talked about making sure that the chair of each board and possibly each committee would be provided an account, and we've never done that because of the cost. It was going to be so expensive. So I did research, and there is a possibility that we could go with a Google account where we would have a domain name of something like Plaistow Committee or Plaistow Boards or something like that, and the username portion of the email would be something like Planning Chair, Budget Chair. So it would not be a person's name, it would be just the position, so that when the chair changes, that person would move their email or give the email to the next chairperson. If we did that, the cost would be $50 per email account. So we are still researching that, and I have not had the opportunity to discuss that with Mark, but I went and did the research for it. And whether we decide to give all of the chairs accounts and whether we choose to give the auditors those kinds of accounts, that's a separate discussion. But I don't think it doesn't stop the current elected auditors from filling out the MS-60. And it's kind of expensive for every year. It's kind of expensive.
And Jay, go ahead.
So when you sign an agreement with a vendor and you get a office suite, there's typically a set amount of accounts.
Mm-hmm.
Do we know what that set number of accounts is?
Yeah, it's done per
So
account.
we're on a per-person basis?
Yeah, it would be $50 per person. They would
No,
include.
with our current IT vendor
Oh,
that's handling all of our maintenance and our software.
when I talked with Mark, Mark said the cost of all the email accounts that we currently have, which includes our 5, plus all the town employees that have town email accounts, the cost for those is $200 per year. That's the charge that we were being charged by the IT organization that was supporting us,
Wow, okay.
okay?
I'd like to know, because usually these type of things, you're allotted a certain amount of licenses. So I don't know what the contract is, I'll have to take a look at it, but it should specify, you get 50 licenses, and that includes, an email. So,
When we were working on the web site, the town website, that was an issue, because if you don't have one of those email accounts, we can't hook you into the website so that people can click on your name and the little form will come up. It only works for those special exchange accounts. And so I asked Mark, what does it cost for this? So he went to the IT group and they said, this is the estimated cost per email account. I said, okay, fine. That's pretty expensive. So doing a Google set of accounts would cost 1/4 or 25% of that. But right now, we're not really we have not budgeted for this, and that we probably would have to put that in the budget for this coming year if we wanted to do that.
Go ahead, Julian.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
question on that amount. I know that question was asked in the past, and I remember Mark answering that question with the same answer.
Yep.
But we had a different IT provider when that question came up last time. What is the price for we have a new IT provider now.
We have a
The
new,
answer could be different, maybe. I don't know.
okay, so we do have a new IT provider. I don't think we'll get paying him any less.
It'll be good to know.
It was my understanding, and I could be wrong on this, but it was my understanding also that, as Jay mentioned, we had a set amount of slots for our emails and that we had maxed out on it. So I think that was part of the issue, that if anybody else wanted more town emails, that it would be an additional cost. So that's something that I think we need to take a look at, and maybe we can revisit. We can get a hold of the IT vendor and find out. Go ahead,
It
Julian.
almost sounds cheaper to just buy another domain, and you're allowed to have so many email addresses in a domain. Isn't that true, Jay? Because you've done this probably more recently than I have.
Well, yeah, through Google, it sounds like it's
Yeah,
cheaper, but
then you you
difference-
give so many per account, yeah.
Wait a minute. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
The difference is that if it's a town email, then it's on the IT's servers. It's on their servers, okay? So that we're limited to there, okay? And so is our website is on the same server. So if you were going to create, let's say, 12 more accounts, yes, it would be cheaper to go through a Gmail and have a new domain assigned. You wouldn't be limited to the number of accounts, but it would be $50 per, and you'd be using the Google's servers is where the mail would actually
It could be
be stored.
Plaistow.org instead of .com.
Exactly.
Okay,
Exactly.
Jay, one more comment?
is there any right-to-know implications about having a personal email as opposed to a town email?
From what I understand, if there should be any kind of litigation, if you are using a private email address, that is also subject to scrutiny, and that's why we do separate, kind of the separation of church and state type of a thing. So that would be at an issue.
They could pull up your entire account if it was a legal litigation or something.
Throwing that out there.
Having it on the Google account, you basically could have a master password that you'd be able to reset all the passwords, and you'd be able to get into the email to be able to do a right to know. You'd have that ability.
So,
But that's, I was just thinking, in our right to know training, they discourage private emails because you subject all your emails to be looked at when they start looking for something else, if some legal action should happen, and they're
Right,
looking to find.
that's correct.
They could look at all your private information at that point. So you've opened up the door to your personal life by using a private email.
correct. I think Greg's point perhaps was that we need to, two of our elected auditors are also on the Budget Committee, and I know one of their greatest concerns is to make sure that we are spending the taxpayers' money appropriately and appropriately. And so I think it begs that we look at another email direction so as to save the town in general money. And if we can, add other people onto it at a cost savings, that's certainly worth looking at. So I think that we should take a look at that. And, would one of you mind looking into that and finding out, I don't know, I hate to keep asking you, Greg and Jay, but.
Well, if we're going to make a proposal to say, these are the people that we want, the boards and
Yeah.
the chairman of the boards and committees and whoever else that we choose, then we're going to come up with a number, and we're going to come up with a dollar amount, and that would have to be added into the budget, into the budget that we
Right,
provide.
right,
Okay?
right.
And we need to communicate that to the budget committee of what we're actually doing.
Right, so I think we need to research that further. Would you be able to get some of that information from us and maybe
I think
report?
one of the issues and why the email thing came up was if someone wanted to contact the planning board or someone else, they would like to at least be able to contact the chair. And I think back when we discussed maybe at least just giving an email address provided by the town for the chair, and that address would never change. It wouldn't have a personal name on it. It would say chair of whatever. And
right.
that way, anytime someone had a question for a town commission or committee,
Right.
Go to the chair.
they
Right.
would not be at the situation not knowing where to email it to.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest issue. I don't think everybody needs to have necessarily their own email address at committees, but the chair, the focus point for each committee should have a consistent
Yeah.
email address.
Yeah.
And also, when one person leaves that office and next person takes over, there's no continuity because you'd lose all the information. So the next chair would not know what the previous chair was getting if it was a personal email.
Right.
All the emails would be.
You lose all the continuity,
Right.
all the
But
business.
that's exactly what Greg was stating
Yeah.
earlier. That's exactly the reason. So you've just
So it is important
restated
that
what
we
he
do
said.
something.
Right,
At least
right.
for the chairs.
Right. And if anybody does want to contact boards and committees, that information is on our town website underneath boards and committees. So it's not like we don't have any information, but I think it bears to have a second look. So if you could do some numbers on that, that
Okay.
would be great. Go ahead, Jay.
Who can I go to get that number of what our allocated licenses are? Is that through Greg? or do I
Greg,
need
I'm
to go
guessing
to-
Greg Colby, would Jay be able to get that information from our IT vendor about how many licenses we currently have?
That would include emails?
I'll reach out to them tomorrow and get all the information based on what I'm hearing, that you're
Okay.
looking for. And then forward it off to Jay.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you
Greg.
so much for doing that.
Copy me as well, please, Greg.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, so are we done with this discussion, hopefully? Yes, okay. All right, so next discussion is the 9/11 ceremony, and as you are aware, every year, we honor our fallen countrymen in this horrific, horrific attack on our country. I scheduled it for 9/11, and we used a similar format to what we did last year, and I'm going to preface it by saying that it may be canceled if the COVID-19 virus resurges in town, but it was normally done outside, and I believe it's on a Friday this year. And so we have the same format that we have used in the past, and we will socially distance. And as we get closer to that, I will check with both chiefs and Denise Horrocks to make sure that we're in compliance with our restrictions. And if we have to cancel it, we can cancel it. But Beth has already reached out to several of the people. So the only thing I'm going to ask is if we could have maybe a selectman give a short statement about it. I know Greg had given me one last year to read, and I'm going to actually throw it out to possibly Jay, since you're our newest selectman and you're the only one that has no, I don't want to put you on the spot, and if you choose not to do so, I have no problem with that, but you're our newest selectman. It would be really nice if you could say a few words, so think about that and just
Yeah,
get
I'll
back
think
to me
about
and
it.
let me know. I'm not going to put you on the spot tonight in camera. So think about that. We'd love you to do that. But otherwise, it will go on as scheduled. And I think we need to start bringing back some of our traditions in the town. We've already canceled so many of them. It breaks my heart to have to do that stuff. So if we possibly can do it, we will do it. Go
I
ahead,
just want to
Julian.
make sure that we don't, because certain things went certain ways in the past. And I know that the only military organization in our town, physically in our town, is our local American Legion. However, the closest VFW, the AMVETS, the other organizations, if they wish to speak or say something, they should be invited to all these events. And I think we should make that a standard. Even though I know the local American Legion usually makes most of the arrangements, they are our local people, et cetera. But even the other organizations, I do have Plaistow people in them. And I think that's, community leaders of various organizations can participate. I mean, even the Lions. I mean, have we ever invited the Lions? And we just started inviting state representatives. So those are little things to consider, the people we invite. Because they are community leaders, and people usually like to hear from their community leaders.
Okay.
Right.
All righty. Okay, so if we are finished with that, we are going to have to approve 2 non-public minutes, and that'll be done very quickly. Before we do that, I just want to ask Greg Colby if he would be kind enough to talk to us a little bit about the acquisition and disposal of real estate, if you're prepared to do that. I know that we need to make a decision regarding a property in Plaistow as far as first rights of refusal. Are you prepared to talk to us a little bit about that, Greg?
I guess it depends on whether you have any questions or not. I know, in the acquisition of property that comes about during the year, the town does have the expendable trust fund that currently at the end of June has about $113,000 in it. You know, and for more money, I suppose there would be the contingency fund. But if you have specific questions, I can either answer those or, you know, try and research and get back to the board, you know, with proper answers.
Okay, so I guess my question would be, is, in your opinion or in your estimate, is this piece of property something the town could possibly utilize? And I know that's kind of a loaded question, but I honestly can't, I don't want to expend town funds on a piece of property that we're not getting taxes on and that we're not going to utilize. It doesn't make sense to me.
Or try to have to spend money selling it later.
Right. So,
Yeah, like I said, that certainly is a loaded question.
sorry.
I don't know. I mean, thinking where, you know, we've got the new public safety complex, we have the new highway garage, you know, the relatively new library. You know, if you want, you know, I'm not so sure you want to build a new town hall at this point, but I don't know for what other uses.
Yeah. I guess that's my point as well. And so maybe this is something that the board should think about and consider, and we'll make a decision on it for our next meeting. But Jay, you have your hand up first. Wait a minute, Jay, and then Greg, and then you, okay? Go ahead, Jay.
Are we looking at purchasing or disposing of property?
From what I understand, it's the property that's located by the tire place that was originally supposed to be used as a park and ride right off of Westville, and it is not utilized for that. Okay. And so I believe the state wants to dispose of it and give us first right of refusal.
All right, I remember that when Mark talked about it. I didn't realize it didn't say here, so.
No, I think this is just background information of you know, disposal and purchasing of properties for the town.
So are we just preparing, or do we need to make a decision whether we're going to refuse that first right? Or
I believe we need to make a decision to the state that says, yes, we want it, or no, we don't want it. Is that correct, Greg?
Let's see how much.
I'm unsure on that. I looked through some of it and it talked about going through the whole process. You know, and it does appear cumbersome. So, you know, obviously we'll stay in contact with the state and, you know, see where it goes and make the board aware of it as soon as we know anything further.
Okay. So are you recommending in the meantime, we should just think about whether we think it's appropriate for us to make an offer? And then the second question that I have is, if we do want to make an offer, do we even have enough money to buy it? That's the second question. Go ahead, Greg, and then I'll get to you, Julian.
So there are already some cost associated with this just to be able to be in the running. And then there is an appraisal for fair market value. And
Correct.
I'm not really sure if you consider that a commercial site that we have the money to be able to afford that.
Exactly.
I'm guessing it could be anywhere from $50,000 to $150,000 for that piece of land. I'm not really sure that we have those funds, and if we do have those funds and we have no real purpose or even no future purpose, I would probably rather have a commercial concern bid on that land and put up another building that brings taxes into the town. I don't see a purpose either.
Okay, go ahead, Julian.
I got the same opinion. I don't see a purpose. The town would have another big parking lot. A business might want that. They might want to build some residence there. I don't know what a contractor would do with it. That's what they feel is their profit or not. But as a town, it comes off the tax rolls. We'd have to come up with the money, which I don't think we have right now. I don't think the voters of this town are going to vote to put more money on to buy it. And I don't think we've got most of the primary buildings we need for the town. We have them. And we even have a courthouse now we're using, because now suddenly we don't have the courthouse there anymore. It's not a courthouse. So I don't see acquiring more land when we actually have land now that we couldn't get rid of.
Yeah. All right, so great, I'm sorry, Jay.
So where do we come up with the dollar amount? Is that the state's gonna say this is what we're looking for this piece of property? Or do we have our assessor go look at it and give us an assessed
I think
value?
from this, the state would do an
5A.
appraised value,
Yeah.
and they may use our town assessors, and I don't know the answer to that. But I think the bigger question begs is, are we going to utilize this property for anything? Because if we don't have a use for it, it doesn't make sense to purchase it, I guess. Go ahead, Jay.
Well, yeah, that's, it's happened so quickly. What could we possibly use for it? Yes, it'd be nice to put that back on the tax rolls. But I guess one question I do have is was any of that land that was used for that parking lot taken by eminent domain? And do we know if that gets, because they're disposing of it, they're not using it for a parking lot anymore, does that get returned to the abutters that they took it from?
No.
Or?
Once it's taken over, it belongs to the state.
And then the state can do whatever it wants.
Can do whatever they want with it.
Yeah, I don't know if it was taken by eminent domain. So do you gentlemen want to think about this and make a decision at our next meeting? Or have you pretty much decided how you want to go with this, or what would you like to do? Go ahead,
Madam
Greg.
Chair,
Yes, go ahead.
I think we should pursue what they want for a price, because I know we're looking at it and nobody seems to know what to do with it. And that's a good reason why we should look into it, because that's a prime piece of property right in the middle of our town, right off our highway. And to let it go to some developer, I know we should just worry about taxes, but, pieces like that don't come along every day. I think we should look into the value and make them an offer, because I think we can find something to do with it and say, wow, what a purchase this is.
Okay.
I don't think we should just dismiss it right away.
All right, so on the second page of this paperwork, and you don't have it in front of you, unfortunately, John, I believe it says the department, DOT, will charge an additional fee for the valuation process based on the cost incurred by the department, minimum $600 to reach statutory minimum fee of $1,100, as stipulated in RSA 4:43-A. So I guess what I'm hearing from you is you are willing to invest up to $1,100 to get an estimate on the property and then make a decision. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, we just broke ground up on Sweet Hill Road on a piece of property we had for 40 years. And lo and behold, it's a good thing we had it, because that saved us some money. So I don't think we should just look at the property and say, what are we going to do with it? Because 20 years from now, or even less, the way the growth is happening, that property is going to be worth something to this town. And I think we should at least look at it before we walk away from it.
Oh, okay, good point. Go ahead, Jay.
And just one thing to consider when you look at where that property is, yes, it's right near 125, but
Yeah.
you also have a lot of condos around there. It's a potential open space that could be used as a recreation area, but just a thought. I'm not saying that's what we should do with it, but it was just a thought, because you have all those apartment buildings over there, and, there's that open space.
Go ahead, Greg.
I'm looking at that same document that you are. It talks about the above process takes approximately 1.5 years to complete. So theoretically, we're into August, we're going into the budget session now. You could always, based on fair market value of the assessment, the reassessment that we're doing right now, that's scheduled to be done in November, should give us an idea of what the fair market value of that property is, and a warrant could always go to March to the voters to give them the opportunity.
That's an excellent point.
Good point.
All right, so is it the board's general consensus that you want to wait until?
Long as the assessor actually assesses that property, because it's state property. So I don't know, do they actually assess that?
They have to assess all properties in town, is that
Even if it's
correct?
state?
Yeah, I believe so.
I believe so.
Yes, all right.
Then that would be a good plan.
All right, so that's a good plan. So this is not necessarily time-sensitive, Greg, where we have to make a decision within a certain time period? Because I didn't see that in there either. I don't
I
think it
mean, looking
is.
at the 1.5 years, I think if we send them the $500 and say that we're interested, that will at least hold the spot in line, so to speak.
500.
All right.
I thought it was 600. Oh, 500, all right.
No, there's a deposit of 5, and then there's other assessing charges. All right, so is that the board's general consensus to move forward in that manner, is to send the $500 deposit and to wait until it's properly assessed so that we can put a warrant out in March to see if the townspeople would like to purchase it?
Well, what line item does the $500 come from?
Well,
I guess that would be,
Well,
that's a great question.
2D,
contingency, the trust fund, there's a number of places, the unanticipated.
Yeah, the contingency fund, you mean?
Yep.
Okay, all right, so I'm sure we can find some place to find that money. So if it's the board's general consensus that we're just going to wait on this until we get a little bit more information, we can table that until the values anew comes out for that property.
so we don't have, do we have time not to pay that $500? Do we have a period of time where this elapses? I didn't really see it in here.
Right,
And I saw two different items, two different $500 amounts.
well, one is 500 and one is a minimum of 6 up to 1,100 on
No,
page
but
2.
Under the note, when a party requests to purchase a parcel, it also
Right.
provides a $500 initial administrative fee. Is that the same one that's described in D? Or is that something else?
But it says right there, it does not provide the requesting party a first right of refusal.
doesn't give
so-
you any extra benefit.
Yeah.
Nor does it guarantee that the property will be sold to the requesting party.
Right.
So that looks like that's a $500 fee that's gone regardless of what happens.
Does the town own any other property
Tons of
in
property.
town that's undeveloped?
Yep. It's in our town report. A lot of it is wetlands, but yes, we do have undeveloped town property,
That could be built on?
potentially.
Okay.
So what I'm
really-
what
I'm
am I
really
hearing from you
questioning.
guys?
I'm really questioning if you look at what this property is going to sell for, I don't think that we should be speculating. I don't think that's the role of our town. If we had a specific need, we said, oh, this is perfect. We should go off and purchase this because we need to build a salt shed or whatever. Then I would say, all right, yes, let's take a look at it and see if that property is too expensive for its purpose, and maybe we should build that salt shed someplace else. Or, yes, it's perfect, and we can afford it, terrific.
But to John
It's going to be a
Blaine's
very,
point,
very expensive piece of property. It's not going to be cheap. This is going to cost a lot of money.
but let's find out what it's actually assessed
That's
for
fine.
first, right?
Yeah.
But to John Blaine's point, is if it is within our grasp of that capital reserve fund by some dint of good fortune, John made the excellent point that, and I don't know what it's zoned for, and I'm guessing it's commercial or industrial, but I don't know that. I'd have to go look that up. But that could be an excellent selling point for a developer for condos like John and Jay said.
Correct.
So why don't we wait? I'm thinking
Yeah.
we all should wait and get the information from the assessment first. And in the meantime, I think we can wait a week or two or whatever to look into this $500 fee. I wouldn't just jump in and authorize that at this point either. I
Put this
think we
on our
can
action
wait.
item list so we don't forget to
Yeah.
revisit this.
Yeah, we
I think
can.
one example John gave, that the Sweet Hill Road property, way back, they
Yep.
thought that could be a future water tower. That's why we had it.
Right.
They didn't know how far in the future it would be, but they were at that point
Right.
saying, this could be a place for the water tower.
Yep.
And that was the reason, really, they kept that piece of property up there.
Right, and we might decide, we
Yeah,
might
yeah.
find out that this
Yeah.
particular property is worth $1 million, and obviously, we wouldn't be in a position to purchase it, so we should
Right
find
next
that
to
out
prime
first.
it's right next to wetland and everything else. There's going to be a lot of permitting. You want to do something there.
And the other thing that's gonna raise the price of this land is that we're putting a water pipe right through there.
Yeah. Yep,
So that's,
Yep.
it's gonna be,
All right.
it'll be adjacent to potable water,
Yeah.
which I believe is gonna even increase the valuation of that even higher.
okay, so what I'm hearing from the
Point, if-
board,
if
what
we
I'm
get a
hearing.
good deal on it.
What I'm
this
hearing
town could
from
always
this
sell it.
board
Yeah.
is that you just want to wait on this until we get the valuation of the property. And I think we can probably maybe ask the DOT when a decision needs to be made. And so Greg, I'm going to ask you if you have time, is it possible for you to contact this guy and ask him when the decision needs to be made so that we can or cannot, because if he needs this decision by October and we're not getting the valuations until the end of the year, that might cause us to go to a different decision tree.
Yes, I will reach out to them tomorrow, see what I can track
All right,
down as
thank
far
you.
as information.
All right, thank you
And
so
the
much.
timeline that they're looking at.
I figure we could always ask our assessor for a little
All right,
guesstimate on
right,
it.
right. Yeah, I'm sure we could do that. And I'll
Guesstimate
put in
on
an informal call into Cochran Associates and see if she has a current idea, because actually last year we just brought everything up to almost 100% valuation anyway. So she might have some kind of a ballpark for us as well. All right, so if we're done with that discussion, before we do approval of non-public session minutes, I just have a couple of other business items for you guys to consider. The Energy Commission, the chair of the Energy Committee sent me an email requesting that the board reappoint Jerry Marchand for another 3-year appointment, and to also appoint Peter Belo from an alternate to a regular member to take the place of a member who had resigned. So, Beth, do we need formal appointments for that?
Yeah, I can have them ready for the next meeting.
All right, so we'll have that ready for next meeting, and if you guys are in general agreement with that, I'll make sure those appointments get written up for the next meeting. The other issue that we want to talk, or I want to talk about too, is I've had multiple calls from our trash vendors from the RFPs. They're sending us out tons and tons of questions that we're trying to answer, and they all 2 of them asked if we could extend the deadline by 2 weeks to August 31st, and since we're 9 months out before we have to make a decision, I just made the decision to say, of course you can, so we extended that deadline so they can, get us some more information. And then the last thing I wanted to let you guys know is that there is a Boston Post Kane Award, and that's awarded to the oldest living citizen in Plaistow, and it is Verna Carbone. And so the Plaistow Historical Society reached out to her and her family, and I believe they're going to present her with the cane at her home this Thursday at 4:00 p.m., because obviously we can't do a public celebration for her, under the COVID-19. So I just wanted to let the board know that, and I will probably ask, I believe Jim Peck is going to put together a proclamation for her, and so on behalf of the board, he can, give it to us and we can sign off on it and send it to her as well. Okay. So before we go into non-public, do you guys have any other issues or
Doing
meetings that
selectmen's
you
report?
made
Yeah,
today?
do we
Yes,
have any
selectmen's
status
report.
do we have any status on our town manager? Have you heard anything, Greg? On
No,
Mark?
I have
About
not.
Mark?
I tried calling him today and no answer, and I didn't hear anything back from him, so I am unsure.
Okay.
All right, well, hopefully he will reach out to us shortly, and we will find out what's going on with that. All right, and Jay, did you have any stuff you wanted to report on, or?
I did get an email from the Rec Commission, and it's in this
Yes,
folder. It's a very
yes.
thorough, very great report. We did not meet last month. I did attend the Energy Committee meeting, and we discussed the RFP for the solar panels. I don't know if Julian wants to add more detail to that, but the RFP that they were above what we had allocated for. So one of the discussions was to have, the chair of the Energy Commission was going to talk to one of the companies to see if they would tail back the scope, to see if maybe they can fit within that 68,000. I
Right.
think that's the number, 68,000. If they can tailor it back to that amount to see what we could get for that, if it's even worth it.
Right.
So, and please, Julian, if I've left anything out.
Yeah,
please.
I think the other thing was the two proposals were giving us, they weren't exactly like systems.
Yeah.
So how do you compare two unlike systems? One was larger kilowatts than the other one. The payback period calculated out a little different from one to the other. So it was really hard to make a really good decision, one over the other. You know, one was more local, one was another state, but that shouldn't be the determination of the best value. So I think one of the things we tasked the chairman was also going to ask the same questions to each one to try to get, so we can make a comparison between the two.
Okay.
So, and to scale it back. But I don't really, my opinion about scaling back, when you tell a company to scale back, they'll just say, oh, the price is, you can only spend 2/3 of what we offer, we'll just give you 2/3 of the product. It doesn't mean you're going to get a different value on the product, so.
All right.
I
So
thought
basically it's
overall they were
tabled,
both too,
it's-
I thought they were both too high.
Yeah, all right, so you're
Yeah, so
basically,
there was no recommendation, and
Okay, all
we're
right.
going to get more information, and we'll bring it back.
all right. And if there are no recommendations by the end of the year, that was a, what was that? That was a warrant article to spend that money, so that overage, that $68,000 would go, I believe, back into the general fund. Is that correct, Greg?
No?
If we don't spend it? It was a warrant
Yes,
article.
that would be
Yeah,
correct.
all right.
Yep.
Okay. Go ahead, Greg.
If there was, yeah,
There was no time limit, I don't think, on,
So from what Julian was saying, it sounds like what was being requested was not detailed enough. And I'm wondering whether or not we asked for the wrong thing.
So that was also part of the discussion, was to possibly redo the whole process
Yeah.
and go back
Okay,
out to
all right, so
RFP.
we'll let the Energy Committee give us some guidance on that as they see fit.
Yeah.
All
yeah, I
right,
want some clarification. I thought so you're saying that if we don't spend the money for the Public Works facility, it expires?
well, we can encumber
I
it.
didn't know there was a time limit on getting the job done.
there is a time limit, and it can be anywhere from 1 to 5 years. It depends on what the warrant article said, and I don't recall off the top of my head what the expiration was that we put on it, if
Yeah,
any.
it's non-lapsing, it's what, 5 years or something?
Yeah,
Right,
because
right.
that's an important question to make for
All right, we can
decisions.
look into that as we go into the warrant articles at the end of the year.
Because I don't want to rush into a project.
No,
unless we get the
absolutely
best value.
not.
If we have the time, we don't have to rush into it.
Right, and we don't even have to do the project either.
Maybe the technology will.
I know, yeah, you never know.
Comes down next year.
All right, so we will be careful when we make our decisions, and I totally agree with that, and we'll just get more research on that as well. So do you have any more stuff to tell us about, Jay? No? Good? All right.
I'm good.
Greg?
Nope, all
No,
set.
you're good. Julian?
I'm good. We already talked about.
All right, most of everything, and I'm good as well. So the last,
good.
Greg Colby, do you have anything else that you would
Good,
like to
John?
tell our board about or give us any information on before we go and approve non-public minutes?
Did we ask John?
He didn't? he
No,
was
I
out?
do not. I think we're all good.
Okay, all right, and John's been out for 2 weeks, so,
I don't know if he did anything. I'd like to ask him.
all right. John, do you have anything you'd like to say? I'm sorry we left you out.
Oh, no, I've had quite an eventful couple of weeks, but I won't share
We
it
probably don't want to
tonight.
know about that, I know. Okay, all right. So,
Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. That was Julian to help you out with that. So I guess next under, and the last item agenda is to approve our non-public meeting sessions. And I believe we had 2 of them. And again, I'm going to remind the board that one of them is sealed. So if you want to discuss it publicly, we have to go into non-public. But if you want to put a motion on the floor
Is there a second folder?
pardon, there's 2 of them. Oh, yeah, do you have? Yeah, oh, Beth has to give them out, I'm sorry, I had it ahead of time, sorry. It's just so I knew
You
what
can
I
have
was
that one back.
talking about. So there's two non-public minutes. The first one is dated July 13th, and those minutes are sealed. So if you want to just quickly read through and approve the meeting minutes, and if you choose to unseal them, you can do so at this time.
Can I ask a question on
Sure.
the first one? Is it the normal process to release information such as this after it's been decided on by the board?
Yes.
It is, okay.
Yes, because obviously everyone's
It's a done deal.
salaries are public information. The taxpayers pay for all of the employees' salaries,
Well,
so
I
it's
just
a
was
matter of
curious
public
in terms
record.
of, there's a lot of comment about performance and
Yep,
other things in there
yep.
as well.
Yep.
So would you entertain a motion to unseal the July 13th, 2020 non-public session minutes
And approve them,
and approve them?
right?
Yep.
Yep, that's fine. If everybody's done reading it, could I have a second on that?
I'll second it.
All right. So if there's no further discussion on that, all those in favor will take a roll call vote on that. And John, I think you may have to abstain on this because you don't have the physical.
Right, just put me down as abstaining.
Okay, yeah, all righty. Sorry about that, bud.
That's okay.
Ms. Hart?
Yes.
Ms. Talion?
Yes.
Mr. Kishka?
Yes.
All right. Mr. Jarosh?
These will stay sealed?
No, there's unsealed.
They're unsealed, yes.
All right, so we have 401 as a vote. Julian, a question?
One of my questions in here has not yet been answered.
Which is,
Can I say it in public now, so it's
well,
released?
if it's unsealed,
There was one part about the last sentence on the bottom of page 2.
on
That the
2?
increase of his retirement would not come from taxpayer funding, because of the way his contract was worded, remember? The wording of the contract.
Where are you seeing this in this?
The last 2 lines
Yeah,
of the paragraph on page 2.
so I'm on page 2.
Yeah.
The last paragraph, the second to last paragraph. What does the paragraph start with?
It says J. Kiska Estates, that part right there. Page 2.
I don't even see it.
Bottom.
Oh, are you on the other one?
No, you're on the other one.
You're on the July 27th one? Okay.
Oh, I'm on the July 13th one.
Yeah, we were on the
No, we're
July
on
13th.
July 13th, yeah,
We're on July 13th, that's the only one that was sealed.
all right.
One. That's the one you're talking
And
about.
so what are you talking about?
That was kind of a question that we couldn't be answered at the time, okay?
I'm sorry, I don't.
That was
see the
just a
question.
comment. That was a comment, that wasn't a question.
Like I said, what the question at the time was, yeah, I didn't think that increase
Right.
would only come out of the water fund money, not, because of the way his contract is written, the way he
Right.
wrote his contract,
Right?
that contribution portion couldn't come out of the
Right.
taxpayer,
And I
but
think-
only the
yeah.
water fund.
And I think you
And
voted
it didn't specify in
appropriately.
his contract there was any separation of where it came from.
Well, I'm going to maybe ask
Something I
Greg.
didn't pick up the first time.
I'm going to ask Greg Colby that I would guess that as a water superintendent, the water superintendent fees are paid out of the Water Enterprise Fund, and any associated benefits and taxes would also come out of that fund too. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, so there's your answer.
Okay, because it didn't really say that in his contract. I can get an answer from you another
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
If you reread his contract, on that portion, it was really fuzzy
All right,
where it came from.
okay. But it seems to be fairly clear cut that if you're a water superintendent, you're paid out of the Water Enterprise System, and any benefits, taxes, et cetera, come out of that specific fund.
Including any
Yes,
retirement
that's right.
contribution.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay,
Right.
so, all right, so we have that is all taken care of, and then the next non-public session, which is not sealed, if you'd like to read that and approve those meeting minutes.
So I'll make a motion that we approve the July 27th to 2020 non-public session minutes.
Ready, may I have a second on that, please?
I'll second it.
All righty, and again, John, I'm sorry, you're just going to have to abstain on this one too, since you can't see it. And I think if we are
Right,
going to
I
have.
abstain.
Yeah, and I think if we have virtual meetings with part of our board from now on, we have to find a method of being able to give them our paperwork in addition to what you already send us by email, so that we don't have this issue happen again. So that's another thing in my head that we need to think
But
about.
that is problem. If it's
Yeah.
not
Yep.
totally secure, you can't put non-public
Right,
sealed stuff on.
right. So
electronic.
we'll have to figure that, we'll have to scratch our heads on that and
Even
figure
an
that
email,
out too.
because any email could now come under right to know.
Yep, you're
Even
right.
though it was a non-public minutes, if you
You're
send
right.
someone non-public minutes to our email, it becomes right to know, and now it's not really sealed.
Right, that's right. All
you gotta
right,
be
so
really careful.
all of those in favor of that motion to approve the non-sealed public minutes?
Ms. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Talian?
Yes.
Mr. Kishka?
Yes.
Mrs. Roche?
Yes.
All right, and then, so that motion carries 401 as well. So if we have no other business with this board tonight, I'm going to adjourn this meeting at 8:30. And Mr. Colby, thank you so much for sitting in on this. We really appreciate your expertise and your input. And I will say goodnight to
You are
everyone.
welcome.
All right, thank you.
Hey, you don't talk as much as the other guy.